Corey Lewandowski, center, President Trump's former campaign manager, and George Gigicos, right, who was the White House advance director, boarding Air Force One after a rally in Ohio in July. Doug Mills, The New York Times. 3 months ago, Corey Lewandowski, President Trump's first campaign manager, quit a new Washington lobbying firm he had helped start after the election, amid scrutiny over his firm's clients and his extraordinary access to Mr. Trump. But Mr. Lewandowski's departure from the influence business did not last long. About a week after leaving his old firm, Mr. Lewandowski started a new consulting business, according to corporate filings. And now, as he takes on an increasingly broad role as an unofficial White House advisor, he is building a roster of clients with major interests before the Trump administration, including an Ohio-based payday lender seeking to block or overturn new federal financial regulations. Mr. Lewandowski appears to be positioning his new firm as an advisory business, part of a growing cohort of Washington influencers who advise companies on how to navigate the government but do not register as lobbyists or disclose their clients. A draft contract obtained by the New York Times stipulates that Mr. Lewandowski's firm cannot and will not engage in any lobbying or advocacy services, but his new firm once again puts Mr. Lewandowski at the center of the ethical quandaries surrounding the Trump White House, where the president has given significant access and power to friends and loyalists who are not on the government payroll but work as lobbyists or retain significant outside business interests. Mr. Trump's kitchen cabinet includes Washington lobbyists, a variety of so-called strategic advisors who provide advice on government policymaking but are not registered as lobbyists, and a panoply of wealthy friends with extensive business interests before the government, such as the billionaire corporate raider Carl C. Icahn, an unsalaried special advisor to the president on regulatory reform. Besides Mr. Lewandowski, a number of other Trump aides have joined advisory firms or struck deals with lobbying firms eager to have influence with the Trump administration, among them Jason Miller, a former campaign aide who now works for Teneo Strategy, and Michael D. Cohen, Mr. Trump's self-described personal lawyer, who in April announced a strategic alliance with Squire Patton Boggs. Mr. Lewandowski started his new business, Lewandowski Strategic Advisors, in May, according to corporate documents filed in Delaware, 8 days after he announced he would part ways with the Washington lobbying firm he helped found, Avenue Strategies. Mr. Lewandowski has recently discussed expanding the new firm by adding, among others, 2 more Trump insiders, the former Trump deputy campaign manager David Bossie and George Gigicos, who stepped down Monday as Mr. Trump's White House advance director, according to 2 associates. Among the first new clients of Lewandowski Strategic Advisors is an Ohio-based company called Community Choice Financial. The company is a leader in the payday lending industry, which has faced heightened federal scrutiny in recent years. Payday lenders have energetically fought efforts by the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau to limit loan practices that consumer advocates have called abusive. Community Choice Financial's chief executive, William E. Saunders, Jr., once referred to the Bureau as the Great Darth Vader of the federal government. The White House did not respond to questions about whether Mr. Lewandowski had discussed the payday lending regulations with administration officials. In an email, Mr. Lewandowski said he was not a lobbyist. "I don't lobby and I don't intend to lobby, ever," he wrote. But Mr. Lewandowski, who is known for his keen understanding of Mr. Trump's news media tastes and habits, used an appearance on NBC's Meet the Press on Sunday to press his new client's interests, calling for Mr. Trump to oust the Bureau's director, Richard Corder, an Obama holdover who has led the effort to pass new payday lending requirements. "It's my recommendation to the President of the United States to fire Richard Corder," Mr. Lewandowski said. He added a criticism of a new rule issued by the Bureau last month that bans financial companies from using mandatory arbitration clauses in customer contracts. The Trump administration has already said it would support congressional efforts to nullify the arbitration rule. Rejecting a question from the Meet the Press host, Chuck Todd, about whether he had a client that wants to see Mr. Cordray fired, Mr. Lewandowski said no. I have no clients whatsoever. He explained his opposition to Mr. Cordray by pointing to a similar position taken by Representative Jeb Hensarling, Republican of Texas and the chairman of the House Financial Services Committee, who has called on Mr. Trump to dismiss Mr. Cordray. But a draft contract obtained by the Times indicates that in July, after Mr. Lewandowski left Avenue, Community Choice Financial offered him a $20,000 a month retainer in return for strategic advice and counsel designed to further the goals of Community Choice Financial. Mr. Lewandowski had previously helped recruit Community Choice Financial as a client for Avenue Strategies, which reported receiving $160,000 for lobbying from the lender, according to congressional disclosure forms. Asked on Tuesday whether he worked for Community Choice Financial, Mr. Lewandowski offered no denial. Documents obtained by The Times indicate that Bridget C. Roman, an executive vice president and the general counsel of Community Choice Financial, was among the company officials personally involved in negotiating Mr. Lewandowski's contract. Reached by phone, Ms. Roman said she was not familiar with Mr. Lewandowski and would seek more information from colleagues. "It's just not ringing a bell to me," Ms. Roman said. She did not reply to a follow-up email. Though he was fired by Mr. Trump during the 2016 campaign after a bitter power struggle with the campaign chairman, Paul J. Manafort, Mr. Lewandowski remains close to Mr. Trump. The two talk regularly, according to associates of both men, and Mr. Lewandowski enjoys frequent access to the White House and his former boss. Mr. Lewandowski left Avenue after revelations that a second firm he created with his Avenue co-founder, Barry Bennett, was listed on business pitches promising prospective clients meetings with Mr. Trump, Vice President Mike Pence and other senior members of their administration. Though Mr. Bennett and Mr. Lewandowski said the proposals had been circulated by a business partner without their permission, several White House aides reached out to Mr. Lewandowski to express displeasure with the attention the business was attracting. He left Avenue soon after. One Republican consultant familiar with the White House's concerns said Mr. Lewandowski was acutely aware of how his business reflected on the administration he helped elect. He never talks with the president about specific client concerns, the consultant said. But Chris Ruddy, a conservative news media executive and friend of Mr. Trump's, said the president generally seemed less concerned with his former aides' outside business interests. "The president respects loyalty, and Corey has been extremely loyal to him through thick and thin," Mr. Ruddy said. "As long as that continues to be the case, the president is going to be supportive of Corey." Since leaving Avenue and starting Lewandowski's strategic advisors, Mr. Lewandowski has become a more regular visitor to the White House and a more active player in Mr. Trump's political circle. Last month, Mr. Trump gave Mr. Lewandowski and Mr. Bossie the task of drumming up support for an ultimately unsuccessful last-ditch effort to resuscitate the Trump Act effort to repeal the Affordable Care Act. Last week, Mr. Lewandowski and Mr. Bossie traveled aboard Air Force One to a rally in Youngstown, Ohio, with the president and his White House staff. Mr. Lewandowski also recently changed his Twitter profile picture. It is now a shot of him aboard Air Force One. Fred Wertheimer, the president of the watchdog group Democracy 21, said Mr. Trump's White House appeared to be allowing outside advisors an extraordinary amount of sway within the administration. Democrats in Congress have asked the Securities and Exchange Commission to investigate whether Mr. Icahn has pushed policies that have benefited his own businesses. "Advisors like Mr. Icahn and Mr. Lewandowski exist in a never-never land," Mr. Wertheimer said, allowed a high degree of White House access while remaining unfettered by the ethics rules and financial disclosures that apply to government employees. "This is self-dealing by these intermediaries," Mr. Wertheimer said. "They aren't in there to give good advice about what an administration should do. They're in there to get special influence for their clients or financial benefits for themselves." A version of this article appears in print on August 2, 2017, on page A1 of the New York edition with the headline "Trump Loyalist Quits Lobbying to be Advisor."